We are all on a journey. Whether you've thought about it this way or not, all of us in our deepest parts of our identity struggle with the meaning of life or the purpose of why we're here. It's characteristic of the human experience and is especially characteristic with those who are searching for spiritual meaning in their lives. As we conclude our worship series, Branching Out, today we are pondering what it means to help others and even ourselves search for the meaning of life. Today our guest preacher is the Reverend Gary Mason, who works with an amazing organization called Rethinking Conflict, who helps us bridge differences with people who are searching for the same things as us. And today he taps into a rather unexpected source for wisdom, one of the wisest people ever, Solomon. Let's listen to his message to us about how to connect with people who are searching for meaning in their lives, just like we are.
I'm not seeing any of my audience today as we're doing this virtually, but I know, like me, you've wrestled with questions about how do I know God? In the text there in Acts 17, it talks about an unknown God. There was a time in my life when I asked questions like, does God exist? What is the purpose of life? What is the meaning of life? And it's interestingly, if we're to turn back the pages a little from the book of Acts into the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible, into the book of Ecclesiastes, we see another wrestle with an ongoing the God and life's meaning. Ecclesiastes, I would describe as a very strange, mysterious, difficult to understand book. We often ask the question, does it teach us to eat, drink, and be merry? Or does Ecclesiastes even deny life after death? I wouldn't recommend reading Ecclesiastes for your year's devotions. I would suggest the ultimate event would be disaster. But yet in those opening verses of Ecclesiastes chapter 1, and I want to highlight today verses 1 through to verse 11. It's one of the most misunderstood books of the Bible. What is Solomon really trying to say to us very sophisticated 21st century mortals? In short, the book of Ecclesiastes forces us to the conclusions of a person without God. And philosophically, those conclusions add up to futility, hopelessness, and meaninglessness. The renowned German philosopher Nietzsche came to the same hopeless conclusion about life. He actually took it a little bit further than secular humanists. And those existential writers of the 20th century, Kafka, Camus, Hemingway, and Sartre, all kind of bemoan the fate of an irrational universe. But Nietzsche took it further when he said, suicide is the only conclusion, God is dead, and now I might as well be dead as well. But I want to suggest to you, if you're a thinking person about the purpose of life, the meaning of life, is life just simply a 70 or 80-year stretch that we endure and then die? I want to suggest this book is a book for thinking people. Because what is really happening is Solomon looks at this from the perspective of truth and meaning, a search which he suggests can end up in ultimate futility. He uses that phrase, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. I imagine within a US context that you may remember the mysterious demise of Tennessee Williams. He was one of the greatest playwrights in the history of the United States. His very famous Streetcar Named Desire, because his desires moved him to despair, eventual drug addiction, and in the end, you may remember, he choked on a bottle top. So let's be honest, life can be utterly meaningless. One writer said, my life has a twisting plot of a Shakespearean comedy and the drama of a general hospital, but it's actually as pointless as a rubber knife. So let's ask those questions today. Is that it? Is life the pits, pointless, irrelevant, meaningless? What Solomon's trying to do in this very difficult to understand book is this. He's showing us what life is like from two very distinctive points of view. From a person who fears and obeys the Lord and a person who doesn't. And what he's simply doing is playing the game by the rules of a secular person. If all you can believe in today is what you can see, touch, and prove, if all you can prove about life is that it's here and then it's gone, then everything is simply like a vapor or a breath. So I want to look at 4 areas today. Work, nature, the senses, and history. And simply ask the question, do they teach us anything at all about the meaning of life? The question of work. I often smile when I'm in the United States, and I'm sure you'll not mind me teasing you somewhat in this virtual experience. But driving down your interstates, moving in and out of grocery stores, every person I seem to meet in the United States seems to be in an incredible hurry. And so Solomon asks that question about work. What does a person gain from all their labor as they toil under the sun? And in verses 3 and 4 of chapter 1, he asks the question, generations come, they go, but the earth remains forever. And then he pushes it that a little bit further and he says, what is the point of our toil? Generations come, generations go, but the earth remains forever. So let me ask you a question. What do you accomplish when you go to the office or wherever you go to do whatever toil is yours? What is our toil going to mean? What is the gain? What is the profit? When all the transactions are over, when all the taxes, social security, and insurance and retirement benefits have been withheld, what do I take home? And so Solomon in chapter 2, verse 11 says this, when I have surveyed all that I have done, what I have toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, like a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. So let me ask you a question. Is your life simply a chasing after the wind? And you all remember as little kids, invariably, we chased the wind, but we never caught the wind. No profit, no gain. Much of my life seems to be simply like chasing the wind. That's life's verdict for the secularist, who faces the implications of what he or she believes. We live, we work, we die. Solomon continues and begins to wrestle with my second observation, the question of nature. That's in verses 5, 6, and 7 in chapter 1. The sun rises, the sun sets, it hurries back to where it rises. Days come and days go. The second illustration from nature is to do with the wind. The wind blows to the south, turns to the north, round and round the wind goes, ever returning on its course. A kind of endless cycle of seeming repetitions. It's futile. It's the pits. This is often called the shortest complete story in English, supposedly written by the very famed Ernest Hemingway. 6 words long. For sale, baby shoes, never worn. For sale, baby shoes, never worn. And that very simplest of narratives contains elements of death, loss, brokenness, and a longing for peace, rooted in the fact, reflecting a longing that's rooted in the truthful themes of the Christian faith. The third word picture is in verse 7. All streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, there they return. Water flows out, gets gathered up, comes down, flows out, gets gathered up, comes down again. It is constant repetition. Generations come, generations go. So the conclusion there is in verse 8. All things are wearisome, more than one can say. The eye is never enough of seeing. The ear never has its fill of hearing. The very life of the earth turns meaningless if you view it from secular humanists. 4 psychologists a number of years ago did a study of what they termed very notable quotations from famous people all around the world about the meaning of life. It was a detailed study as they analyzed the quotations of 195 men and women who had lived within the past 100 years. Let me give you a summary of their major themes. Number 1, life is primarily meant to be enjoyed and experienced. Enjoy the moment and the journey. 17% of famous people in the study endured this theme. Ralph Emerson, Cary Grant, Janis Joplin, and Sinclair Lewis. You probably remember Janis Joplin's best known for her lyric, "You got to get it while you can." The second thread in relation to this study was we live to express compassion to others, to love, and to serve. 13% endorsed that theme. Albert Einstein, Gandhi, the Dalai Lama. Einstein stated only a life lived for others is a life that is worthwhile. The third theme was life is unknowable and mystery, not dissimilar to our text. The all-knowing God. Can we ever know God? 13% endorsed that theme. Albert Camus, Bob Dylan, and Stephen Hawking. Hawking wrote, if we find an answer to that, why we and the universe exist, it would be the ultimate triumph of human reason, for then we would know the mind of God. The fourth theme was life has no meaning. 11%. Sigmund Freud, Kafka, Bertrand Russell, Jean-Paul Sartre, Clarence Darrow. Darrow compared life to a ship tossed by every wave, every wind, headed to no port, no harbor, no rudder, no compass, no pilot, simply floating for a time, then lost in the waves. The fifth theme was we're to worship God and prepare for the afterlife. 11%. Desmond Tutu, Billy Graham, Martin Luther King Jr., Mother Teresa. Desmond Tutu said we should give God's glory by reflecting his beauty, reflecting his love. That is why we're here. That is the purpose of our lives. The sixth theme was life is a struggle. 8%. Charles Dickens, Benjamin Disraeli, Jonathan Swift. Swift wrote that life is a tragedy wherein we sit as spectators for a while and then we act our part in it. The seventh theme, we are to create our own meaning of life. 5%. Carl Sagan, Carl Jung, Simone de Beauvoir. Sagan said we live in a vast, awesome universe in which daily suns are made, worlds destroyed. Humanity clings to this obscure clod of rock called planet Earth. The significance of our lives and our fragile realm derives from our own wisdom. We are custodians of life's meaning. And the eighth and final one was life is a joke. Charlie Chaplin, Lou Reed, Oscar Wilde. Chaplin described life as a tragedy when seen in close-up, but a comedy in the long shot. Solomon then continues his probing and talks about our senses, sight and hearing. The eye never has enough of seeing, or the ear its actual fill of hearing. The eye's never satisfied. No matter how much we see, no matter how much we possess, and the ear never hears all its wants, especially of those things that please us. Several years ago, a popular singer expressed really much the same sentiment, only in a completely secular sense. She sings of young love, pleasure, marriage, children, life, and death. But interestingly, at the end of each stanza, she laments her hopeless cry that if this is all there is to life, let's just get drunk, let's simply have a good time. I would suggest that a person who does not have Christ at the center of life will never, ever be truly satisfied. And then he deals with the question of history finally. There's nothing new under the sun. We use that phrase, most of us, once a week, I guess, looking at our news, looking at the state of planet Earth, but it was Solomon who said it first. What has been done will be done again. What has been done will be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. The French have a proverb that goes, the more things change, the more things turn out to be the same. And I often look at Solomon's life. I think he's a very 21st century mortal. And I remember beginning a sermon a number of years ago, which did make an audience sit up, and I'm going to use the same phrase for you. And our very highly secularized, sexualized, secular world. I began my sermon by saying, I know a person who had sex with 500 women. That got their attention. And after this amazing experience, because most of us, as we watch our adverts or our TV programs, we work on the assumption that sexual pleasure is the ultimate fulfillment of life. This person tried education. They tried architecture. They tried sexual pleasure. And they end up sitting on a hill outside Jerusalem saying, it wasn't worth it. I need to get back to God. It was that person that wrote this book called Ecclesiastes. And Solomon uses that phrase, under the sun, 30 times in Ecclesiastes. Remember, he's talking about a world we can observe. He's not talking about spiritual things or eternal things. He's talking about the things that are important to those who live their lives believing that what they experience, that is the totality of life. But for people of faith, the truth is there are new things. A God that puts a new song in your mouth. A God that will create a new heaven and a new earth. A God that gives you and me a non-divided heart and puts a new spirit within us. A God that says if you are in Christ, you are a new creation. The old is gone, the new has come. So I want to suggest to you today that now is the time to make that preparation for that final journey. Brigitte Bardot, the well-known French actress of another generation, once said this: I don't want to die, but I think about death every day. It must be our punishment. It's a decomposition that gets to me. You spend your whole life looking after your body, and then you rot away just like that. It's horrible. You rot, you fall to pieces, you stink. It scares me more than anything else at all. The Harvard psychologist and researcher Daniel Gilbert opens his best-selling book, Stumbling on Happiness, with what he calls simply the sentence. The sentence begins with these 8 words: the human is the only animal that. And Gilbert argues that every professor needs to finish that sentence. So you're curious, you're asking, well, Gary, then how did Gilbert finish that sentence? What is the defining feature of our humanity? Now, Gilbert is a secular psychologist, but I think his answer is really, really insightful. The human being is the only animal that thinks about the future. Because human beings think about the future in a way that no other animal on planet Earth can, does, or ever has. And that simple, ordinary act is actually the defining feature of our humanity. Statistically, the average adult spends 12% of every day thinking about the future. Roughly 1 of every 8 hours. We can imagine events years into the future. No animal can keep up with us. But let's imagine a day, that day, when sin, death, and evil are finally defeated by Christ. I mean, suppose you had this crystal ball along with God, looking into your future, your sin, your smallness, your stupidity. And yet in reality, all of us in serving God can have that deepest desire, heaven, eternal joy. So today, as you wrestle with the question, as I have, much of my life, if I'm being honest, is spent at times trusting God in the dark. I don't have all the answers to life. But I came to faith as an agnostic. In many ways, C.S. Lewis had a very, very profound influence on me. I often think of this wonderful quotation, I was dragged kicking and screaming into the kingdom of God, probably the most reluctant convert in all of England. But C.S. Lewis, as you know, went on to live a very profound life, one of the best Christian apologists of all time. He wrestled with issues. He wrote books like A Grief Observed, The Problem of Pain. He did not sail through life unscathed. But Lewis, like you and me, I hope, realized that in the midst of this world of alleged happiness and joy, pursued from a secular perspective, Lewis found real meaning in a relationship with Christ that transformed his life.
I found Gary's sermon deeply meaningful and resonant with not only my own struggles, but with those who are searching for spiritual meaning in their lives. And he happened to tap into what I like to say is my favorite Old Testament book, the book of Ecclesiastes. It doesn't take long to read it. I hope you'll take a moment sometime in the coming weeks to read it for yourself, and you'll discover that Solomon's journey for meaning in his life not only connects with ours, but with people who are unchurched and searching for similar things. And you might, as Gary suggested, find ways to bridge those differences with others and introduce the possibility of Jesus Christ as the center of their lives, as Jesus is wanting to be at the center of ours as well. We're grateful that you joined us for this message and want to let you know you can join us every week with these worship services and sermons. And we hope that you'll take a look at the reflection questions that are found as part of this post and join us online or in person at hydeparkumc.org for us to continue this journey together as we discover Jesus Christ as the center and the hope for meaning in our lives. My name is McGray de Vega, the senior pastor. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.